starting. Okay. All right. So now you guys got
But I
4
have to
hours
go.
and I'm going to go see my daughter and have to go get ready to go do that. Okay. So I do value this conversation. I, for myself, got a lot out of it. Okay. I do see how it was non-focused for possibly some of you. And to the extent that you expected me to moderate with focus, I apologize. Okay. So that's my checkout. Okay. I do love you all.
Enjoy.
Okay. Are you guys staying on or go? Should I leave it on in the background or should I have to get into the shower.
I just want to congratulate Kayla on getting her presentation together for her dance.
Yes,
Oh, that
congratulations.
my website.
I need to do that too. I think I'll get a recording of a nagging wife or something and just randomly play it through my Google.
No, this is my website,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
I paid someone to do that. I didn't do that.
Well, that's wise. That's wise. You got the time to spend. If you can, that's wise. Yeah.
I would never
You
have.
get a better job.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they did a better job.
Yeah. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Well, I just wanted to check out, and I have no idea what you guys were talking about. Unfortunately, I had to get pulled several different directions this morning, so I wasn't able to participate as much as I wanted to. But it sounds like everybody's personality is kind of synonymous with the weather today. So over here in California, it's really dry and windy, and it's definitely fire weather. It's like irritating, and I don't want to go outside.
I see.
Yeah, it's a good thing Alex isn't here because I'm having a mimosa.
Ah,
You know.
well, it gets really bad in Canada where the heat mixed with the moisture makes it even feel hotter. So I hear Arizona can have very high temperatures, but you can say, how can it be that hot? But it's because it's dry.
By the way, where in Canada are you?
I'm from the Maritimes.
Maritime.
Fredericton is the name of the town in New Brunswick.
I can't confirm nor deny that.
Oh, you published it on LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but that's not connected to this venture.
Are you close to the United States border?
Not too far away. Yeah.
I'm gonna be there for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even think the border's open yet. I heard.
Yeah, it is. They just opened it. Well, at least in one direction.
Yeah. You'll have to come here, Kayla.
I think the US opened it incoming from Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
that
know
was,
about outgoing.
Incoming from Canada. Yeah, Canada to US. And then you have to live in the US the rest of your life till COVID's over.
oh.
No. No,
You would have to
there's not a big difference. There's not a big difference. I've been to several places in the US.
Yeah. Well,
I think there's just like such a large landmass. There's differences everywhere. It's depending on the mountains, or you got the Rocky Mountains, and you also got the mountains and the whole what's that mountain range called? It's not the Appalachians. Is that what it is?
Which one are you thinking of?
The one that comes up through Canada and down through the States.
That's Rocky
Mountains. Yeah, Rocky Mountains.
Western Alberta.
Yeah. Yep, they're beautiful.
since it's just the three of us, how did you guys feel about today?
I was excited until the drama started, because I like focusing. I like the meta and being meta because you get somewheres, right? You get some maps out there, and I think all that's missing is focused effort. Like, we can focus a little bit, but if we don't put the effort, like Barry says, you get distracted, and that's lack of effort. So we need effort to not be distracted or to follow through. That's why I like the idea of the Trello board. So Sam said he had 8 things that he hasn't brought up. Like, I don't know why he didn't just write them all out in day one on the Trello board under his section. He could have had a lot of interaction with one of us who was really gang-ho on that as well. I don't know. Gung-ho, I guess is the word. Gang-ho. Gung-ho.
It was also hard for me to kind of see the Sam and Stacy dynamic.
Stacy seemed to be, I think Sam was in normal form. Stacy seemed to be a little more triggered, but Barry might know because he knows her better. I don't know. She definitely told me again that she didn't want to collaborate with me. So, that's fine. Because I give her pushback, right? Like,
Statement.
I've had a lot of discussions with Stacy early on, and we got along really well. In fact, Sam said we're like husband and wife there for a while, bickering and going on. He says, yeah, I think some people made that comment just because we bicker, not any other reason.
Bickersons.
Bickersons, yeah, we were the Bickersons. But I think she took offense because I'm very analytic and skeptical. So if I like something, I'll try to break it a bit to see how strong it is. Give it a stress test. Are you sure about that and this and that? So, but when she talked about some very personal things, I can't really talk about that stuff.
Of course.
But as far as there's been some clashes with Stacy I've had, like Sam, he wanted to go back and look at something. There's some video I'd like to go back and look at too, where it was actually Sam that was making the fuss, and it was about the newsletter. So one of the focus things we were going to do in the group was make a newsletter.
Yeah, I was supposed to do that too.
Yeah, well, yeah, but no, that wasn't. But at the time, we were using the Trello board, and Stacy didn't know how to use the Trello board. So I was putting the stuff in there. And then I come late to a meeting, and I think Stacy had already volunteered and got the go-ahead from Sam to organize the first newsletter. So I had some ideas. I wanted to do one on Diane Kolick. Like, I have some mind maps of the people at the time. Another one was just some people, Michael Josefitz, and some other people that I thought could have been highlighted in the newsletter. So I didn't ever want to manage it. I only ever wanted to be a participant in someone writing with it. But what the block was is that Stacy wanted to do something special, and she wanted to unveil it. So I asked a couple of times, because I was just thinking, simple collaboration, like I could write a couple stories, but I don't know, for some reason she was resistant, and that might be because of blocks from other conversations we've had previously. Anyway, Sam told me a couple of times to be quiet because it's already been decided. And I'm just trying to find out the definition of who could do what. But I guess the two things were is that Stacy was going to design something and my input was not required. So I just dropped it, and then it never went anywhere. And I think she actually blames me for ruining it. That's the part that really hurts me. That's why I mentioned this thing. I try to, contribute or whatever. I wasn't even trying to tell her how to do it. So in that case, I wasn't actually trying to break it. I was trying to add to it because it's a pretty straightforward thing, a newsletter, you would think, right?
Yeah. So just to remind you, this is being recorded.
I don't care.
And
Okay.
Stacy's not here.
And yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I've talked about it a few times. I don't blame her, because that's what she does. She wants to do something special. So once I figured it out, problem I think in that case was of twofold. I didn't come at the beginning of the meeting, so I hadn't seen that transpire. So I was just under another assumption when a decision had seemed to have already been made. So they'd already decided.
I'm sorry. I'm going to ask Barry. Barry, what did you think about this session?
I thought it was a fairly typical meander and relatively minimal with respect to contentious exchanges. I've seen far more contentious exchanges in the past. Today's wasn't that bad by relative comparison, but it was a typical meander.
And what do you think about the topics that we meandered on? When you say meander, I'm thinking of like a really nice river.
Yep.
And I like to say, oh, what do you think about the eagle that we saw? What do you think about the topics that we were on?
Well, the one that Stacy had proposed in that post, I thought would have been worth spending at least 20 minutes on. We did not end up doing that. And often Sam will propose a topic that we'll spend, a good 20, 30 minutes on. Today, we didn't really pick a topic to spend, a substantial amount of time diving into. And that's why I say it's kind of a superficial meander. Like a river really does go downhill. It doesn't make a beeline. It really, really meanders. So, and I'm not necessarily objecting to, I mean, it's a coffee clutch. You sit down, you say, all right, we're going to meet on Saturday morning for a cup of coffee and a bagel, and we're just going to talk about whatever we talk about, and there's no planned talk. I had asked Stacy, and you may have seen this in the chat. I said to Stacy, I'll scroll back and find it here if I can. I asked her to compare Sam's Club to Jerry Mikulski's club and to Jimmy Gumdrop's Clubhouse Club. I don't know if you know who Jerry Mikulski is. If not, I can fill you in on that. But Jerry Mikulski also has either a weekly or bi-monthly regularly scheduled Zoom session, not unlike this one, except that Jerry Mikulski always has a very concrete agenda for each meeting. And so that's sort of opposite of Sam kind of being a little more loosey-goosey about, picking a topic in real time during the opening 10 or 15 minutes. And I've only been briefly in one of Joshua's Clubhouse sessions. And when I was there, I didn't even know that his avatar name was Jimmy Gumdrop. So I thought that was somebody else.
Yeah.
But I was proposing to Stacy to sort of compare and contrast these three different leadership models and see if she had anything to say. And she demurred, saying it would take more time to think about it and respond. So maybe in the future. But there is this leadership question of, if you're the moderator, if you're the organizer, if you're the person who calls the meeting and hosts the meeting, what role are you playing in terms of defining the scope of the session? Is it just a coffee clutch, or people just, randomly mention whatever's on their mind at the moment? Or is it a session where somebody comes prepared to present something they've been thinking about and working on and want to deliver a presentation and then have a conversation about it? I imagined when I started coming that it was going to be more like, here's a jointly agreed upon project with a shared values and shared objectives, and we're all going to contribute, we're all going to have an oar in the water towards this one objective that we're working on at the moment. And it turned out that wasn't what GCC was about. And I was kind of surprised at first, but then I realized, well, it is what it is. So this meander was not surprising. It's just what we normally do. Is it the best use of my time? Probably not. But I got all the time in the world because I'm retired. So, what difference does it make?
Well, I think that the lack of structure is actually, in one way, a way that you can feel comfortable coming like you would to a coffee shop. Because when you're coming to the coffee shop, all that's got to be there's the coffee and the people. But that's why I think a dynamic present, if we want to be just a little bit more focused one day, we could, say, okay, everybody get out a piece of paper. It's going to be focus day. And we're going to write a premise on it and just see if we can keep to that topic until someone wants to change it. And then we cross it off and put another premise. And we could actually have that on the screen share, right? Like I could do a screen share and write the premise, and I could start a timer, put the person's name beside it, and then click the timer, and soon, it just keeps counting up so they can see how long they're talking without having to worry about clicking buttons and managing things, because not everybody's technically adept, right?
But GCC established its culture kind of organically. And once a culture gets established, which then determines who stays and who departs, a lot of people who I don't really know were here and departed during the first 3.5 years or 3 years or so. And so the surviving culture kind of determines who continues to show up and who dwindles, slowly comes fewer and fewer times until you don't see them at all. And once you've got the culture, it kind of is self perpetuating. So I'm not too surprised that today's was a fairly typical meander, and I have stopped expecting it to be anything much more than that.
Well, that's
I have a long game. Oh, go ahead.
that's really interesting because people go to certain things for various reasons.
Right.
One of them is, and they're obvious. They either like the people, they like what the organization stands for, what the topic is.
Right. The
And
purpose.
yeah,
It has a real purpose, which is a well advertised, well understood purpose. When you go there, you're contributing to pursue that purpose. And
right.
maybe you've done some preparation to make a contribution towards that purpose.
Oh, go ahead, Tees.
You're muted, Tees.
Yeah, I was muted. But I think the beginning was nice because it was about listening. And
Right.
I'm not familiar with Google and the persons there. So I was very interested in
Okay.
what happened with the person, what the stories of some with the guy working at Google and
Yeah,
Laura.
Norvig. Yeah. By the way, there was one more item on that thread with Laura Norvig. One of Laura Norvig's respondents said that she was aware of an experiment that some people had done with respect to listening. So when they were engaged in a listening activity, they began by saying, do you want me to listen for the purpose of reacting? Do you want me to listen for the purpose of providing advice? Or do you want me just to listen and not respond, not say anything? And this person said 9 times out of 10, the answer was, I just want you to listen. I'm not looking for advice or reaction. I just want an audience.
Yeah, there's a meme for that, isn't there?
Surprised at that because, I mean, if I just want an audience, it's like Dear Diary. I'll just type into a blog. And I don't need a live audience, to articulate something. I'll articulate it onto paper with no live audience, and then I'll publish it. I'm sort of surprised that people need a live audience that just sits there.
Yeah.
No reaction, no feedback, no advice. I mean, Collins says he's looking for feedback. I would have expected more people to say, I want feedback on what I'm saying. But 9 times out of 10, this person says they just want somebody to sit there and not react and not offer, but just listen.
Yep. That's why
I
that's
think
so powerful.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, and there's a meme for that too, where a wife is sitting there with a 9-inch nail in the center of her forehead, and the husband's sitting there, and he's not supposed to, she's just explaining her day, and he's not supposed to say anything. Like,
Right.
Don't mention the nail, because I know what could fix it for you. I know how we could fix it. Like the man, right? Let's just take that nail out of your head. It's like the nail's a distraction, so that the man, just wants to listen. That's all. She just wants you to listen. Don't comment. Don't say anything about the nail in my head.
There you have it. People want an audience, but a non-responsive audience. I mean, that kind of boggles my mind, but it's a data point.
Well, it's got to be the emotional side of people versus the trying to figure it out. So yeah, I could see like being in Doug's Sunday room, and more like church, you would speak and maybe nobody would say anything. They just, acknowledge you. But that was very much what Gertrude's was, right? Gertrude's was very much that, to be acknowledged. And she would give feedback, but I think it was more for the person to be heard. So there was that benefit. So I think that's the thing. If you have the right environment, like the Talanola, I don't want to say too much and put Kayla on the spot, but we had one time and it was pretty good. So, yeah.
I love messing with you guys.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to mess in cultural affairs. It's big stuff.
But yeah, so the whole thing about, how to be a good listener or what kind of a listener to be, this is, to my mind, is an interesting topic, not just because Laura brought up radical listening and because on National Public Radio, they spent an hour talking about effective listening. So yeah, it's I attend Toastmasters, which is a club that you're supposed to learn how to, but I didn't join it to learn how to speak. I joined it to learn how to be a listener.
I was in Toastmasters when I was like 18, 17 or 18. And then I felt uncomfortable because it's a lot of older people.
They're all older people.
It probably gave you some experience though. It all helps.
Oh yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Two of the stories we're in today, I see them as opposites. Like the one where I misunderstood what Stacy was trying to do for the newsletter, and Sam had already understood. It means that, I was kind of entering at a point of the conversation that was not aligned with what was happening. So So I knew eventually to drop it. Now today, Stacy, when she was talking about AI, it was near the end, I had my hand up, and my last comment was going to be about these things that help programmers write code. So if you're in the piece of your code, logically, these are the 3 or 4 things you're going to do right here. So it kind of writes the code for you in Ghost. And if you want it, you just hit the tab or the enter key, and it'll write that section of code. You hit the tab again, you'll go to the place where you got to put a variable in, like Barry had to do with his learn, it takes you to the different. So it's almost like it turns it into template coding. And as things, it's kind of nice because as things become more optimized, they offer you the more optimized version of what you were trying to do. And you see more options that you might not have known had been there if it wouldn't have offered them to you. But it takes the person to write the program to make sense of it. You just can't tell it some command and then, like Sam said, you get a trivial program. So that goes to the power of what makes people more happy. That code could be used for all kinds of systems, hospital systems, school systems. So when Stacy started to attack AI, I think she was entering the conversation at a point where she doesn't realize what AI can do and how it can benefit people. But at the same time, I appreciate what she was saying, that, and I think it's Glenn's argument with science, right? He says there is no real science. Science is all corrupted, and what would pure science look like if humans could do science for humanity's sake as opposed to corporate? And I'm wondering how misaligned that really is, like how well aligned that view is. Is science 50% corrupt, 80% corrupt, 90%? No, I would like to think that science is no more corrupt than 30%, and the other 70% comes out of, but Barry probably speak to this more because he comes out of the academic. Him and Sam are tied into academic roots, and I know definitely in the social scheme of things, the SJW movements and things have become quite wicked in the university. So yeah, there is change happening. And if you don't know the right level of the conversation that you're into, then I think it would be best, instead of complaining, to acknowledge that you're not good at it and back up one step and say, how could I know? As opposed to just Dunning-Kruger attack things. And that's what I feel when Stacy and Alex are talking about AI. They're just parroting things that they hear as opposed to understanding what's really going on. And it's very relevant and current. So anyway, I'll end with that. Thank you. So if you understand what just to summarize what I'm trying to say, is that if people aren't on the same page, there's going to be that conflict, and it can be frustrating. And if there's no way to show that the white belt is fighting with an orange belt or a black belt, it's kind of, just have, and Alex said himself that, he can say whatever he wants and he doesn't get kicked out. And I think that's a feature of the group, to be accommodating to different people. He says a lot of good things too, but I don't know if he was focusing or defocusing today. He's definitely hitting his hobby horse, that's for sure. And, if we can expect that out of him, I've heard him say it many times. So I don't know if it derailed, but I think Josh did leave because of that. I'll have to ask him why he left, but it wasn't Alex alone, but it was just a trajectory. And then the show just went downhill from there. The variety show. Anyway, I'll stop. Maybe anybody can validate or disagree with me.
I think the problem with science isn't corruption so much as bias. It's very, very hard to weed out your bias. And so when you're doing science, it's very commonplace to look for evidence that supports your preconceived notion, your pet hypothesis, and to overlook or ignore evidence to the contrary. Feynman makes a big point of that. You're the easiest person to fool. Don't fool yourself. And the whole point of the protocol of the scientific method is to escape the trap of becoming biased. Whereas in politics, bias drives politics. Bias is trying to get what you want, regardless of whether or not it jibes with the way the world really works. So I think you find more gaming the system and corruption in politics by a long shot. Not that you don't find any in science. I mean, mainly in what gets funded. So
Yes.
They'll fund science where the funder wants you to prove some hypothesis and disprove some other one. And there are scientists who will sign on to a
To
funder.
agnotology, right?
Well, that's the spread of disinformation and false.
Those are scientists doing that, though.
Yeah, could be. So, I mean, one of the things right now is this question about, well, are we teaching history, or is history his story and not the objective representation of what happened, as an anthropologist might present the science of the evolution of human cultures. So history tends to be biased, and they say the winners write the history. So I think there's some evidence for that. Anyway, it is hard to be an ethical, competent, unbiased scientist. You really have to work very hard, and you have to listen to peer review, because peer review is going to try to identify where you've veered off from pure objectivity, where you've favored one hypothesis and you haven't tried your best to falsify every hypothesis on the table, including your pet hypothesis. But anyway, that, people are biased.
How about
Journalists
this for bias?
Journalists try to be unbiased. Katie Couric wrote a book about being a journalist and how she had to deal with her own bias when she interviews people on the left and people on the right in politics, and whether she gives too much freedom to people on the left and is too proportionally harder on people on the right. And she admits that, she has a hard time just with her own bias. And I think that's true of anybody who's trying to do an objective job, unbiased objective job.
That's part of what the sliders are for, to allow other people to see your bias honestly, so they know. As well, what do you think about the bias of filtering by levels of, like Sam uses the hierarchy of black belt, white belt, orange belt.
Those are metrics.
He's often interjected with Doug that he thinks that that's a valid form of hierarchy.
Well, it's ranking. It's like chess ranking. Oh, Kayla just left.
Yeah, she waved. She's got to do some mama stuff.
I mean, anything where there's a skill level, like in chess, they develop ranking systems mainly so that they can pit opponents against each other who are roughly equally ranked. And so they try to rank people so that they can set up tournaments that are reasonably interesting tournaments. But ranking systems are, they're like any mathematical model. They're rough approximations to true skill. And it got interesting when they try to rank human chess players against AI chess players, because they didn't really have a good ranking for AI, because they play differently. They use sort of different cognitive calculus, than humans do.
Never thought of that. So we'll need diamond belts now.
Anyway, but yeah, you need metrics, but metrics have, metrics are useful.
If we could,
they're not perfect.
I wonder if we could do that for because I think there's a certain amount of, I've seen online, and people get sort of roles as they earn them, not just because they pick them. And we could measure effort, and that could be a criteria. Like when you first join the group, you're a white belt, and then someone like you would say, well, I'm not really a white belt. I've got I've got a word of a day for I don't know how many years. You could flood the place. Look what you did with the terms sheet, right? So,
happens to be a specialty of mine, or a hobby of mine. But
so you would get matched with somebody who's at least at my level, right? Someone who has a degree of some sort and has a specialty, understands, electric stuff. And
that's not really a competition.
Models.
I mean,
no, not a competition, but something to give people encouragement to bring more stuff. Because I think it's like trying to show by example. Hey, look, Barry's orange belt because he's done all this. Sam's a, whatever belt because he's done all these things. And it is arbitrary in a certain sense, but it does kind of give an approximate ranking of effort. And I think effort helps people focus. It could be an attractor. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. As just let it sit with you. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I try not to compete with people because that creates a rivalry. I don't really want rivalries. Like in the fix-it shop, if somebody brings in an item to be fixed and the crew that tries to fix it fails, sometimes I will say to the customer, the guys who worked on this Wednesday couldn't figure out how to fix it. If you like, I'll take it home and spend a week on it. And maybe I can make more progress. And often they'll say, yeah, go ahead, take it home for a week. And then I'll spend, 10 hours on an item to fix it, where it would have been unrealistic for the guys, who are only there for 3 hours, 1 day a week. But I'm in there not to prove that I can do something the other guys can't do. I'm there to try to make the customer happy. And if the customer's happy, I'm happy. If I win, they win. And it's not about proving that I can fix something that the other guys couldn't, because I was only spent a lot more time on it. And
I would also say that's a really good example of the time quality trade-off triangle. What is it? Time, quality, cost.
Yeah, I mean, it's not cost effective. If they had to pay me $100 an hour, obviously the item would never get fixed. I'm willing to spend a day or a day and a half on an item at no charge, other than parts, if there are any. And it's like playing a game. Nobody pays me to play a computer game. You do it just for the sheer joy of winning. And rather than play a computer game all day because I got nothing else to do, I'd rather fix their toaster.
Right.
And then if I win, they win too. And actually, that's what happened last week. I fixed a toaster.
I get that.
You have to fix it.
People who tinker like to fix things. There's no question.
Yeah.
And have piles of things they can tinker with.
Emotional payoff. And also because this gets to GCC. Otherwise, that toaster would go to a landfill.
That's true.
Toaster's not going to go into landfill. That toaster is now going to have another 3 or 4 years of useful life. And the customer is going to be very happy because they love that toaster. And now it works again. They don't have to go out and buy a new one and put the old one in the landfill. So that also helps the environment. But do it for money? No, I didn't do it for money. I did it just for the satisfaction of, figuring something out, solving a hard problem, and making somebody happy.
Another thing that could be like an 80-20 rule for focusing during the GCC, because I find when I'm listening to somebody, I'll forget what I'm talking about or what I might have been going to say, right? So, there could be 2 or 3 trails. So if you had a pad of paper, like I try to do with maps, but that gets too elaborate and you get lost, right? But just for the call, for generally, if we had a way that, someone could put what the premise is, and we kind of do it in the chat anyway. If we used to chat more effectively, that would be, and the chat is time coded so we could pull out that data. But it really depends, like how intentional we want to be. Like musicians, they'll just push record in case something happens, right? And I think Sam's using a little bit of that kind of a method, also to the point of not trying to tell people what to do, not trying to be the leader, right? And he's made that point a few times, and that really turns us into a different space. So when people get triggered and there's really no leader, things can, go off the rails, and people have to, sit with it and come back, just like in a real tribe, right? And
Turns into a coffee clutch.
Yeah, that's right.
Variety show. And if you say, well, this is just a variety show, like I have a group of people, we all worked at BBN, we're all, retired alumni. We meet for lunch, it's now on Zoom, every Wednesday for an hour and a half. And we just talk about whatever topic is on, we don't have planned conversation. We just meet and say hello to each other. How are you doing? And what's going on in, either in science or in politics. And it's not planned. It never was planned. It was just, just to maintain the connection with your fellow retirees. And people don't expect it. Now, occasionally people will come in and say, oh, there was a really interesting piece of science or piece of technology, and they'll bring it up and we'll talk about it, but that wasn't necessarily a planned topic.
Yeah, I think there's some respect.
Here I was sort of anticipating there was going to be a more of a planned set of topics around a set of values and a set of goals for the organization. That turned out not to be the case. Okay, fine. It's not the case.
Actually, you're not wrong about that. That is in the atmosphere. But Sam is hoping that the collective intelligence will reach up and grab it, as opposed to forcing it upon us. I think that, and he said, like, I don't know, maybe a year ago, he may have to reconsider the way that the format of the show is. He might be
Well,
deciding that
he said
there's no
today-
way to get a collective intelligence without at least one level of hierarchy.
Yeah, I mean, he said today that, maybe his approach needs to be declared ineffective. Not counterproductive, but maybe ineffective, and that maybe he needs, that's why I raised to Stacy, compare this to, say, Jerry Mikulski.
Yeah.
Who's much more focused, and maybe the Jerry Mikulski model is a better model for what Sam really had in mind. I don't know.
I think it has to be I think it has to be dynamic, and also I think Jerry would have the one level of hierarchy where he's officially hosting the show, right?
And he's
Where
moderating.
Sam isn't really hosting it. Sam isn't really, he's
Right.
he's a 60% moderator. He'll put his foot down. It's funny. Imagine if we could play all the back-to-back tracks where Sam's going, excuse me, or you're interrupting. I imagine we could string that 2 hours long.
Go ahead, T.
Yes, because of course you want to have your expectation was different. I mean, and now it's coffee house. But if I want to tell what I can do here, you have too much CO2 in the surroundings. So my neighbors, it's a group living in a building with a garden. So they allow me to do something in the garden. So I can help to put more carbon into their soil. So, well, so we don't have to do it collectively, but
Yeah.
I like to talk here in the coffee house, more or less, and then find other, it helps me to navigate anywhere. So if I listen to Jim Rudd, I think it's part of the global challenges. So Jim Rudd speaks about something, he is active in something, and so I like that. And then I'm connecting with Oregon and Portland, someone. So it's nice. And it's not that guy, Kirby Erner, is not here, but so it's, for me, it's part of the whole system that I'm talking with. So, so it's not within GCC that you can say, I'm Dutch, European, I know EU policies, and so it's a different world, more or less. And then how to connect and to get one topic to do together, it's very difficult. And but talking with each other is a basic starting point, but doesn't go into any topic that we work on with each other together. Jerry Michalski, of course, is different. Also, Klaus Mager, you know, about his agriculture focus. He was in the food industry. He is from Europe, but so
He
he
doesn't
is
have a
living
show,
in
does he?
USA. So he
Does he
has
have
a
a show?
big topic to, and then he's within the realm of Michalski. So, but he doesn't have his own show yet. So I just tell him, okay, you want to have people to join you. You are the leader on that topic. So start something. But I didn't do that so specific as I say now. So Klaus Mager can do very much on his topic. So the agriculture has to change. So what can we do? We are living in a city. I'm living in the city. Barry is living in the city. But so I have a garden near me that I can work with, but I don't have farmers near me that I can work with. So it's so diverse that we can talk about. So it doesn't matter. I mean, we'll have our own ideas and topics that are hobby horses, anything. But so I don't see, so it depends now really on taking a leadership's role, as some doesn't like. He doesn't want to be putting a presentation himself, but he likes other people to present as a topic. So that's okay too.
My problem is that I'm a specialist in a couple of topics where I have a lot of depth, but also my audience is very narrow for that topic. I mean, a random audience, probably, if I'm lucky, one person in a random audience of 20 people would really be keen on hearing it, and the other 19 could care less because it's too specialized. And
Yeah,
so
it is interesting.
you have to find your
There's no
niche
question.
audience.
I'm finding too, when I'm saying what I said earlier, Barry, you interpreted it as competition. And I would like to propose maybe it's not competition other than with yourself, to as giving something to the group. Like the application I built, the challenge is now, do I want to spend money on it because it's going to start costing me more money as it gets more popular? The server's going to have to handle it. There's going to be more traffic, that kind of thing. So I think I could handle up to a little ways, but if it was open to the whole public, now I got to do users, to the, you know, all the security stuff. So, you know, all this stuff is stuff I want to do, but it takes time, and I probably will.
Your audience
We'll
probably
do it.
wouldn't be more than 20 people ever using it, because it's hard to
Yeah.
imagine people who are not in this group wanting
No,
to
no,
dive
no.
into that database. Why would they want?
Actually, all you have to have is a YouTube playlist. That's it. Like, it's not just this group. It'll,
What are you talking about in general?
yeah,
Not
it,
just
like
for
I
this-
did, I've
oh,
done them
yeah,
for
yeah.
several. Yeah. In fact,
Yeah,
I did
that's a
one
different-
for
that's a different
Metacogs.
story. But then
Yeah.
you need a big back-end database, because you have to process each of the videos in the world and put
Yeah.
them into some kind of a back-end database. That's probably
Yeah.
beyond
Well,
anybody.
there's a certain, I think the way I would run it is it'd be an interest group would get a corpus together.
Oh.
But I want it to be a bit distributed in a way that it starts to be able to be mixed with responses. So it's more dynamic than just what's there, but you can add to it and, you know,
If you had
add
good
to the
code, you could
conversation.
if you had good code, you could probably sell it to YouTube or to Otter or to what, you know, one of these.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, but you
You
gotta
guys
have
help me
really
build
good
it. I'll
code.
give you a cut.
They're not gonna buy it if they can make the code, you know, just as good as yours, you know, with one or two programmers working for a month.
The only way they'll buy it from me is if I get a large enough audience that they'd want to buy out my stake, not the program. Right? It's not the program. They can always rewrite the program. They want the audience that are already using it. That saves them a lot of time. Because if it's successful, that's what, 80% of the battle.
I mean, the main reason people would
You're
want it-
you're into ideation, right? So if you get something where you get like 20,000 to 200,000 people using it, someone like Google will say, we'll buy that for a certain penny. I don't know how many.
I've sort of learned by writing blogs over the last 30 years. I can write a blog post that will live on the internet for 30 years. And if I'm lucky, over a 30-year period, maybe a few hundred people will ever visit the blog post. I think I've had a few that made it to 1,000, but most of them,
Yeah.
you know, barely make it to a few dozen.
It's
So
interesting.
there's your audience for you.
Well, what if you had a randomizer that started to get popular where they could go to the Barry's word of the day, and it kind of had a funky interface on the front of it, right? And people started to like it.
Well,
That you see,
I
because right now you just have it available for who knows it. But if you market it a little bit with a funky interface,
yeah.
and you could even put it into an API where people could subscribe and get the word of the day.
I mean, there are other word of the, I mean, there are dictionaries.
Oh, I'm sure.
Websites that have word of the day. I mean, it's not a unique thing.
No,
What I
but you
try
get
to
up to
do
50,000 or so. You know what I
is
mean?
Figure out what's the zeitgeist, what's sort of in the air, and try to find an interesting word or a set of synonyms that captures the essence of what's happening now.
Here's
That's why
another thing I
brought up
thought about.
Spuddle, for example. Spuddle is really
Spuddle's good.
because it's really a name for what's happening now. People
Yeah.
are, you know, spinning
Spuddle
their
collaboration.
nowhere fast.
Spuddle collaboration. What I was going to ask you about that term sheet, because that is in your wheelhouse of expertise. We could make an interesting kind of a game, you could say, out of it, where people could take a term where 2 or 3 people have put in definitions.
Yeah.
And sort of like that meeting we had with Stacy, you could get together and actually discuss the whys and whats about it, the actual terminology around that. And you could sort of map out a meaning of what that is. And then just, you know, for each, you could do that, like sort of the word of the day, but collaboration term of the week or something.
You know,
You know, there's stuff we could do, like,
I mean, there are people who speak in word clouds, and word cloud is they'll use a vocabulary of, I don't know, 500 words or so, and the same 500 words keep appearing sort of haphazardly, and so you get a word cloud, and you say, but what's the story? What's the message? And the answer is the message is the word cloud. In
to
other
some
words,
degree, yeah, I've noticed that. And I've also noticed that in the word clouds I've built, I have to have some stop words, they call it, to remove certain words from the cloud that aren't relevant. but it gets more complicated as you want to get phrases. That's another level of AI difficulty. And now you're into natural language processing and sentiment analysis. And so all those things are possible for enhancements, right?
Okay, well, it's coming up on 2 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to have anything further you want to discuss? Because
No, I think that was
just
good
went out
after show.
lunch. It's almost 2 o'clock in Eastern time zone.
Yes, and we have the 8 o'clock news in the Netherlands, so then
It's
there are still people who are looking at the 8 o'clock news. The youngsters don't, but the old guys still do. So
so-
Boomers.
So I'm ready to sign off. I don't know, Colin, if you want to do a monologue for the purpose of.
No, I did. I actually did a
recorded.
little sneak one today with the sneaking the journey map in there. So, but I think that would be interesting to try to see if there's any merit in the map to people's narratives, because it kind of hits the milestones that just the general things that one would have to do to proceed towards a goal that you want to learn and have a knowledge repository, and then go on to collaborate when you get to a certain competency. Which,
A goal for me in a coffee clutch like this is, can I say 1 or 2 sentences that make enough of an impression that people remember them after the meeting is over?
that's
And
good.
I consider it a win if I can say 1 sentence that is an insight that people say, that's worth remembering.
yeah, you did radical listening. Radical listening.
That's
Well,
right.
that was Laura Norvig. That wasn't me.
Yeah, but you spoke
No,
it,
no.
so it's your word.
Yes. We're all sponges of our environment. And so that's what we are.
But if there's one takeaway, that you can remember in a paragraph of no more than 3 sentences, that's what I learned today. What did you learn in school today, Barry? Well, I learned one thing today, all day, 6 hours in class, but I can remember one thing I learned that I can tell Daddy at dinner.
Hey, maybe we need a challenge show where I could challenge Sam with things that I'd really like to see. And he'd say, you know what, Colin, I think that's good. Why don't we do that? Because you know how you told Sam today that you were felt aligned with Sam and what he's trying to do, like that, I think that kind of feedback really helps people jump to it. If people were nipping at my heels for more software, I probably would have wrote that software a month ago, right?
I mean, that's
But
because
I got better things to do.
I did what Sam did. I helped co-found an online learning community that had a written charter, that had a
Yes.
written social contract,
Exactly.
that had written protocols for how we engage, rules of engagement, terms of engagement. And so I went through this exercise for about 5 years in the second half of the 1990s. And Sam was sort of trying to do the same thing, but more organically. We try to do it more intentionally, more deliberatively. He's doing it more organically. And he's basically concluding that the organic method didn't yield what he thought it was going to yield. And I could say, well, here's a contrast. Here was a deliberative process to create an intentional community with a written charter, with a written social contract. And this is what we achieved in this amount of time. And here's the historical record of it. And, he pays your money, you takes your choice. But, that's all I had to offer.
Yeah. Well, when I first made the journey map, I was pointing it at, are you ready was the question. Then I realized from feedback, it's really, am I ready? Right. That's the question.
What do you need to learn right now? Let's learn that.
Yeah. So
My
there's
challenge
learning
was-
loops.
My challenge was, when dealing with one individual, can I get a correct answer to the question, what are you ready to learn right now? If I
Yeah.
get to that, then I say, okay, let's learn that. I know what the word that refers to.
Or explore, like in terms, like, what do we want to explore right now? Go ahead, Tease.
Yeah, but Colin, you say, are you ready? But in the game that I played, the World Bank game 2010, then it was, do you take the challenge? So that's it.
Yes.
So are you
Yes.
challenged? Will you take this challenge? So you can start any barn racing meeting. Will you take this challenge? So then you have to know what the challenge is in advance. So
And on
what is the
Facebook, if I put up a riddle or a puzzle or some kind of a analytical challenge, almost never do I get any takers on Facebook. Now, in the old days, in the other systems, I'd get takers. Facebook, I'm not getting any takers on. Here is an intellectual challenge, a cognitive challenge. Think this through, ethical dilemma or whatever you want it to be. Almost never on Facebook does anybody take up the challenge.
But when we are in the Zoom, then if you don't take the challenge, then please leave.
Just sit there and, stare blankly.
Yeah, that's possible too.
Turn off your camera and stare blankly.
Yeah, I've thought of having different formats, and Sam's kind of started that. So like, I feel real good when we start to discuss the process of having, different ways to focus, different ways to have a meeting, whether someone's going to give a presentation, whether it's just going to be the coffee clutch day, as you say. So yeah, I think there's some value in trying some different things. And it really comes from feedback.
It's still Sam's show. He's still hosting it. So he basically gets to set the parameters for the scope of a session. And if he doesn't want to, if he wants to leave it wide open, well, that's an option. It's organic. But, organic things tend to meander.
I guess the thing I was thinking when you were talking before Tees wanted to speak, I remember I said, I forgot what I wanted to say, was perhaps if you would have came to the group early with this list of what to do.
Oh, like 4 years ago.
Intentional community. It would got rejected out of the chute because there's so many different people came with different plans, like Neil Davidson. There's many.
Sam has his list of the pillars, or whatever he called them, and they didn't get. The question is, who would have signed on to Sam's proposal? I said I would have signed on. I would have understood it and signed on, but maybe 3 of us would have understood it and signed on, and everybody else would just say, "Oh, let me just come and hang out."
That's okay. Because Stacy's got a whole other thing that she wants to do, and I appreciate the fact that she's an organizer. So when she looked at doing, like I complained about the newsletter at the beginning, but when she looked at it, she had her own vision that I didn't appreciate. I was just thinking run-of-the-mill newsletter, right? She says, "Oh no, I got better ideas," and so that's what I think happened. She had a different vision of just, and so Sam says, well, Sam says to me, you can take over the second one. I said, I never wanted to take over the first one. I don't want to take it over. I just want to contribute maybe story ideas and, focus a little bit.
And have other people do the work. Stacy has
not
her
so much do the work.
Stacy has her Facebook group. What is it called? Speaking the Truth with Stacy Druss. Is that the name of her group? So she has, not on Zoom, or maybe she does it with other people on Zoom, but at least on Facebook, she's got her own little group where she's got a focus of whatever speaking the truth means. She brings up the topics and she posts something, and then maybe people respond, and maybe it just sits there and nobody responds. I don't know.
Actually, she brings a lot of lessons learned from that, how she thinks that she's dealing with both sides of many things. So she gets stuck in the middle of the conundrum trying to be, a balanced voice.
Yeah. But look at how we have lost females in this group. We're down to basically 2 recurring female participants. And I think initially there were a lot more. A year ago, there were maybe 4 or 5 women in the group. It wasn't exactly 50-50, but it was closer. And now we're down to basically 2 females who are recurring participants. So that, that's a datum that really needs to be understood.
Yeah, and I'm also interested in the number that went to the I show of Doug versus the we show of Sam. Right. So, and I think you need both. It's the yin and the yang. So
different strokes for different folks, different shows for different audiences.
Yeah, so that's why I think we could challenge each other a little bit, like say, like Stacy was saying earlier, how if she wanted advice from somebody, she'd know who to ask for the advice on different topics and who not to ask for advice on certain topics. And that's kind of fair, right? Who has specialties and what.
Yeah.
And so instead of asking them what they can do for you, if you see an alignment with them, you could challenge them. Like I could challenge you on this emotional learning stuff, and where does it fit in with my journey map, which was my original question. And I'm still have faith that someone's going to hear me. Faith, that's an awful word. Belief that someone's going to hear me and say, why don't we do a show on that? Because when I did do the show on the journey map, it was more of a lecture, and it wasn't intended to be. But I guess you have to explain what the model is before people pick up the pieces and try to put it together, right? I was hoping it would be obvious. So that makes me go back, like Sam said today, well, maybe I'm just not communicating properly. And, Barry gave me the solution long ago. Well, just take out your keyboard and write a paragraph or two about what you're trying to achieve, and people can read it. And you don't, because that's the thing. I think after you know what the topic is, see a tease. After you know what the topic is, then you can bite into it. So I think that's I would analyze a large part of the frustration in the group of people not being ready or personally not ready for that type of interaction, not understanding where the pieces to the puzzle are. And, we're right back to the terminology game, right? So, and my terminology game actually comes with a map. So, I'm not trying to impose anything. It's a general map. So like a template where people could put in whatever they want, add to it, take away from it. But generally, is this the way it goes when people go on a journey? And the first thing in the journey map, and I'll end there, is to do a good consideration of what the cost is going to be. Like how much you're going to have to put into this, and what are your goals? Is it worth going on this journey? That's the first question, right? So anyway, I'll leave it there.
All right, well, then we'll end it there and say goodbye, and I will stop the recording and then end the session. So let's see,
Well,
where's the recording?
Have a
thingy?
great afternoon.
You too. I don't know how to stop the recording. I'm just going to have to end it, I guess, because I don't have an option. Record to cloud, recording this computer. Nope, I'm just going to end it, Sam, because I can't stop the recording.